And thanks for staying with us here on the Joy News channel. This is continuous coverage of that special decision that was made in Parliament a couple of hours ago. Parliament approving, finally, the controversial electronic transactions levy. Fortunately, there are so many reactions greeting this, including those who are members of the Mobile Money Association, those who trade, particularly when it comes to issues relating to the E-levy, and also some legal implications as well. Fortunate to have a number of persons joining me now on Zoom to have a discussion on this. Fortunate to have the Honorable Alhaji Inusa Fuseni, who is the former ranking on Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee, and also Charles Kwame Ado, who happens to be the National PRO for the mobile money merchants. All of these discussions will be held right here on the Joy News channel, but this is it's about time we cross over to Parliament, bring you the latest on what's happening there, as the minority is taking their turns also to address the country on why the E-levy was approved today. We can listen in now. Minority Leader Haruna Iddrisu there with his colleagues.
Second reading, consideration, procedural amendment, and third reading. And we are convinced that this Parliament, guided by the Supreme Court recent decision and Justice Abdullahi versus the Attorney General, the 1992 Constitution, which is the ground of our country, which is the source where all laws get their validity, the majority, following the walkout of the minority, did not constitute a voting quorum as required by Article 104 of the 1992 Constitution and the lucid judgment of the Supreme Court in the Justice Abdullahi matter. So for those of you who are doubting and want to know what guided the decision of the minority caucus, we simply walk out to disable them from having, to quote the words of the Supreme Court, a voting quorum. They are simply and were simply less than 137. At least I'm using 137 because conspicuously everybody in the world and Ghana know the Honorable Ajua Safo was not present, and therefore you had 137. Additionally, we know that there was an ambulance within the presence of Parliament, but the person who is purported to have been in the ambulance was not present in the chamber for purpose of exercising a vote. Therefore, every decision that they took with 136 flies as a sin against the ruling of the Supreme Court. And for emphasis, I'm going to read page 12 of the Supreme Court ruling, when it said, there is a second quorum provision found in Article 1041. This provision applies specifically and exclusively to voting to determine a matter in Parliament. Article 1041 provides as follows. I'm quoting the ruling. Except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of majority of members present and voting with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. During second reading, you did not have half of members of Parliament present. During the consideration stage, you did not have half of members of Parliament present, per the Supreme Court ruling. And during the third reading, you did not have, during third reading, you did not have half of the members of Parliament, more than half of the members of Parliament present and voting. Therefore, those of you who are celebrating with them that E-levy have been passed and accordingly passed, your excitement will be short-lived. Immediately after this press briefing, we intend to file to question the legitimacy of the decision of less than one half of members of parliament taking a decision to approve E-levy at second reading following our walkout and at third reading, which is required. For those of you who want to appreciate it, Article 104 provides expressly, except otherwise provided in this constitution, matters in parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of the members in parliament present. Was half of the members of parliament present when they took it through third reading? Our constitution, the framers, provided an elaborate roadmap for the consideration of bills. It's been advertised or taken through agency. It's been accompanied by an explanatory memorandum, but it been subjected to a debate on its principles. And for the record, the minority at committee did not support E-levy. It took the chairman of the committee a casting vote for us to lose to that casting vote at the level of committee. The Constitution provides that a bill be subjected to third reading. The supposed E-levy bill was subjected to a third reading with less than one half of the members of parliament present and voting. A charade as I have described it. So we are very convinced that there is no E-levy and is working on nothing, because we are keeping the videos and the recordings as we left. And you don't expect to build something on nothing and expect it to stand. We simply, as I have said, when they were told that the ruling of the Supreme Court was an absurdity, many of you didn't appreciate it. Now you do. It means that you needed at least 138 for decision, any decision, whether on amendment, whether on third reading, or during consideration stage, that the Constitution so elaborately provides for. So we didn't want to be associated with it. But at the level of the principle, we shared with the Ghanaian people our objection and rejection of E-levy. We stand same at the same level. So those of you who want to go further, even to the Supreme Court ruling, and still have some lingering doubts, even as we prepare to challenge the matter in the Supreme Court, a judicial determination have been made on Article 104 of the Constitution, clear cut. Anything to the contrary is a sin to Article 104, the 1992 Constitution, and the ruling of the Supreme Court of Ghana. Remember, when they walked out on a procedural motion of 137, claiming a minister had been asked to stay out from the voice vote, or claiming the Honorable Asidin Ketia was present somewhere, their intention was what we have also now intended. Their intention was that they said that we're 137. They are less than 137. And that is what mandated them to go to court to question our decision on 30th November, saying that you could not have a decision with less than 138, with their 138 interpreted to include the first deputy speaker. I should also let the Ghanaian public appreciate that this morning we walked in with some difficulty because of the matter of Asinov. He was essentially in court, and therefore as a minority at that material point in time we were 136, pending whatever decision the Supreme Court and the other courts would have taken to guide our position. But we had advised his lawyers, who were also further going to file a stay of execution at the Cape Coast Court. We're still waiting for signals from the lawyers to know where we are, so that we're not in contempt of Parliament, or he was not in contempt of Parliament, following what the last decision was. So, in summary, ladies and gentlemen of the press, we are convinced that the majority of less than 137 in the chamber conducting business only proceeded on illegal and unconstitutional business, which is a sin on Article 104 as interpreted by the Supreme Court as a nullity in the Justice Ablai versus the Supreme Court. We call it a charade. We are convinced about it. The Justice Abdullahi versus Attorney General. And as I've said, there is a judicial determination on what constitutes a voting quorum. The Supreme Court drew their own distinction between what they call a general quorum or a debate quorum and a voting quorum, which voting quorum is a decision quorum. We are convinced beyond shadow of doubt that Parliament did not have the numbers to take any decision that should bind on Parliament and bind on the Ghanaian people. I'll be happy to answer a few questions from you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, leader. So let's just see. We'll start. You mention your name, and then we'll go. So let's start this way. Parker. We'll start with Parker, then the lady, and then the gentleman. The three of you. Then we'll go that way.
Okay, so so the majority caucus says there's no issue of quorum because at the time the speaker put that question, even though you, the leader, had left, some of your members were still in the chamber. So you can be calculated as being part of the members in the chamber. And then two.
Everyone, proceed your questions. So when they went to amendment and consideration and third reading, our members were present. That's no issue. We have self-noticed that we're not going to take part. Third reading were not there. Consideration were not there. Procedural motion were not there. Those were all decisions. And colleagues, again, let me take you down to Justice Ablai and the Supreme Court ruling. And for those of you who still have doubt, the gentleman, hear what the Supreme Court. This question appears to stem from the fact that pursuant to Article 102, the general quorum of Parliament, which I referred to, is determined without counting the person presiding. But as previously explained, this general quorum provision is not the provision that governs quorum for the purpose of voting in Parliament. And distinguished ladies and gentlemen of the media and my colleagues, hear this. Hear this. Hear the Supreme Court. It said, that is dealt with under Article 104, which says the voting quorum at 1/2 of the membership of Parliament. Thus, I'm quoting, read together with Article 104.1. The quorum contemplated in Article 102 should be properly understood to mean the quorum for all other business of Parliament. Then it says quorum for voting, Article 104.1. That number cannot be less than 138. As poor as our maths and arithmetic is, less Ajua Safo is 137, less 1/2 of Parliament is equal to a charade of a decision that they think that is constitutional.
Continue with your question.
The second leg to it, I mean, you just told us, informed the House that, 136. We know the standard order is clear. When the motion is a tie, it's lost. So why didn't you take a decision to work out knowing very well that you just stayed, you could have ensured that the motion was lost?
We work based on intel. There was one of our colleagues, and we didn't want to see a sick person being forced into Parliament in that state. There was somebody in an ambulance that is sensitive to his medical condition and insensitive to medical advice. They were prepared to bring him at 137. And that would have meant that they could walk away with a victory of 137, 136, given that the honorable member for Asinov was now returning back to Parliament from court, and we didn't know how early he would arrive to be able to boost our numbers. So get it right, and we still were filing the stay of execution, which now has been properly and adequately filed. Therefore, the investor community should be interested in holding this government accountable. They said that I indicated that our country is tottering at the precipice of bankruptcy, and I shared this position when Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia said that he had the key to arrest the depreciation of the dollar. He thought it was an easy he will arrest the depreciation of the cedi. He thought it was an easy walk, just stopping trotro between Wulugu and Sabulugu. Then he could arrest the depreciation of the cedi against the dollar.
Yes.
So what you have on your screens now are live shots from Parliament. Clearly the minority raising questions and confirming now that they may be testing the law. They refer to some constitutional provisions as grounds on which they will be proceeding to challenge the decision that resulted in the passage of the E-levy a couple of hours ago. Let's bring you excerpts of that constitutional provision that the minority leader was referring to, which has got to do with a case involving one private legal practitioner, Justice Abdullahi. And then that interpretation came through from the Supreme Court. So you have excerpts of the Supreme Court ruling indicating Article 102 of the Constitution, indicating that a quorum in Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all the members of Parliament. Now, that is the non-voting quorum. But the explanation from the Supreme Court also indicates that there's the Article 104, which requires that, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. The portions of the ruling also indicate that the rationale for having these two separate quorum provisions in the Constitution is simple, according to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court indicates that the business of Parliament is diverse. Parliament is first and foremost, one, a deliberative chamber where most of the members meet and discuss matters. However, where Parliament must exercise its legislative power to decide or determine a matter before it, the Constitution sets a higher quorum threshold, requiring and insisting that at least half of all the members of Parliament be present before a vote can be taken. So those are excerpts of that landmark ruling by the Supreme Court, and we'll be bringing you some more updates on that. But the gentleman at the center of this case, which the minority leader referred to, is joining us via Zoom now. Justice Abdullahi is a private legal practitioner. He, in fact, indicated that he'll be seeking for a review. Also joining us is the former ranking on Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee, Alhaji Yunusa Hussaini. Thank you all for joining us here on the polls. First of all, let me start off with you, Alhaji Yunusa Hussaini. What's your reaction to the decision that Parliament has arrived at to pass the E-levy controversially, quote unquote, without the necessary voting quorum?
Well, I have always known. First of all, I think that it's proper for me to say good afternoon to my colleague, Justice Abdullahi, and my other co-panelists. I have always known that the government would do anything to have the E-levy passed. I mean, if government were interested in looking at other options, you will agree with me that 3 months is long enough for government to have come up with those options.
Apologies, gentlemen, would have to once more listen to the minority leader who's answering, providing some clarity on questions that are being asked by members of the media.
137, and you cannot in Ghana pay the Supreme Court ruling except when you want to sin against the 1992 Constitution and the Supreme Court ruling, that you would proceed to take decisions when you are less than 1/2 137.
Thank you very much, media. We are grateful for your presence. I mean, we hope that you report.
And then you can look out for Article 106 and matters relating to third reading of bills. That is also a decision. And I said in their ruling, the Supreme Court itself used those words that it affects all other business of Parliament for purpose of a decision. So probably they have to go and come again on E-levy when they have good numbers. But we do not think that as of today, they have sufficient numbers to take a decision and to declare that they have passed E-levy. We will question this decision in court on the basis of earlier ruling and on the basis of the fact that our conduct was called to question when we were 137. We were told that you can't take a decision with 137. Yet they can take with less than 137. We thank you very much, ladies and
Well, so the minority leader, they're wrapping up the press briefing on the E-levy. We still have our guest online with us. Let me get back to Honorable Inusa Fuseini. You were making a point about how government is desperate in passing the bill. If you could just complete that point for us.
Well, let me ask you. There was desperation and there was determination. Largely as a result of the fact that the government appeared to lack options, or those options were not reassuring enough to government. So with parliamentary practice, the way I have come to appreciate it, the majority was only looking for an opportune time, studying the numbers, the reaction of the minority, and taking all circumstances into consideration to ensure that anytime they move their motion for the approval of the E-levy, they will either have a smooth sailing or a situation like has happened will happen so that they can have it passed. Okay. And so even though I'm surprised that government has pushed through its determination to have the E-levy passed, I'm not surprised that it has been passed because it appears to me that government lacked options.
Okay.
In this particular case.
How about the claim that your former colleagues lost the opportunity at preventing the consideration, first of all, on the floor of Parliament?
Yes, to be honest with you, I do not share in the position of the minority. I understand what they are trying to get at, but I fail to see the impact and import of the position because they were in Parliament to perform an official duty. The laws of Ghana must be read in tandem and as a whole. Section 37 of the evidence decree creates a presumption of regularity where an official duty is performed. So by parliamentary practice and convention, if it was the view of the minority that the members of parliament as constituted then did not have the numbers to pass the bill, what they could do in view of the talking about 136 in the chamber, 136, assuming that all others apart from Ajua Safu and the chieftaincy minister were present in the hall, in the chamber. What they needed to do was to just leave one person in the chamber, right, to raise an issue of quorum. That one, you will be invoking the jurisdiction of the speaker to rule on whether there is quorum for decision making under Article 104.
Right. We'll explore the legalities a bit more. Let me also bring in Justice Abdullahi, who is on Zoom with us. Justice, so your case was referred to. In fact, you had indicated earlier that you were going to the Supreme Court on this matter. The minority appears to have taken a step on this. What's your reading of all that transpired on the floor of Parliament a while ago? You'd have to unmute for us, Justice Abdullahi.
I think you muted me, so
Whichever way is fine. Yes.
But
So let's hear you make your points now.
I get saddened that these developments keep occurring because as I've been indicating, I went to the Supreme Court with the mindset and indeed the motivation of getting us all back on track as people that would forge ahead in unity and ensure that our development goes on smoothly without some of these hitches and then sometimes embarrassment that are occasioned on the floor of the House. And so witnessing this scene, though not as chaotic as the previous ones, but one side of the House walking out rather than helping. In fact, I heard earlier that the minority had given a lot of good responses, reasons why they believe the E-levy should not be passed. And so I was hoping that they stay on and vote when the decision comes to that point. We should all remember that the Constitution under Article 104 also has additional provisions. It's not just about voting and not voting. It has additional provision that literally makes all voting that amounts to a draw or a tie a losing vote. So really, I believe strongly that if they had stayed on to debate the issues and vote on the bill, at best, either they win, at best there will be a draw, and a draw as part of our constitution will be a loss. And so it's difficult for me to understand the basis for working out in Parliament. I think we need to be able to build that solid constitutional and parliamentary democracy that would rather take on the views of all parties rather than continuously staging a walkout. I don't think it is helping us. At this moment, we would have on our hands yet another constitutional matter as hinted by the minority. And they may be right, particularly if you look at the case of Justice Mr. Attorney General, where the Supreme Court was emphatic on the quorum for voting and the quorum for debating. And if you notice that the minority walked out, and so what it means is that even if the majority were in full swing, i.e. the entire 137 would have just not been present in Parliament, they couldn't have taken any decision.
And that's an area I would like to take your thoughts on. Of course, you are a party involved in this case, so you've read the judgment. Is that your understanding of what it is that the Supreme Court was saying? And what are the likely legal implications for the decision arrived in Parliament today?
Indeed, that is the understanding. Indeed, that is the understanding that has affected Parliament for the past 3 weeks. If you've noticed, Parliament has not been able to engage in any particular business because each time a matter comes up for decision making, the minority invokes the subsidy versus Attorney General. And then when they invoke it, it puts literally everything on hold because you need at least 138 to be able to do any voting. You can't do anything voting without 138. And the majority understand this particular principle as espoused in the case. And so, so if you noticed from the videos that you covered, you noticed that during the walkout stage was when Chairman Sabonso was insisting that the Speaker conducts the votes so that the minority will be seen to be present, because at the time they were not completely out of the House. And so that tells you the mindset that the majority also understood that walking out by the minority might affect or would potentially affect the outcome of any decision that is taken. But be that as it may, this is what has happened. I think the parliamentary processes have a lot of procedures within which all sides may be able to judge or and find a lasting solution to this.
Right.
We all need the development. If it means going by E-levy, I think we are for it. But in principle, I mean, I do not support paying taxes from my capital. If that's where in my money, my capital is in my my mobile money. I do not support the idea of paying taxes on that, or support the idea of paying taxes on taxes. I do not support that in principle. However, once it becomes law, we all have to embrace it. We all have to participate in the decision making. We all have to participate in the development of our country, and we have to accept it once it becomes law. But until then, I think the appropriate legal processes would have to be gone through before we get to that stage.
Well, Inusa Hussaini, that's where we're likely to see some challenge, because there'll certainly be the need for time. The Supreme Court would have to set a date on which it will rule on the matters that minority is sending to the Supreme Court. So that would mean that effectively Ghanaians will pay e-levy for a while before, I mean, as we wait on the Supreme Court to decide on the matter.
The chances of the Supreme Court reversing an act of the nature that happened today, in my view, will be very slim. The Justice Ablai has referred to numerous in Ablai and the Attorney General's case, in which the Parliament raised the issue of quorum under 104. So, like I said earlier, you need Parliament, you need a member of Parliament to draw the attention of the Speaker to the fact that they do not have the numbers before the Speaker's authority can be invoked. You need it. So in all the situations where a member of Parliament raised the issue of lack of quorum for decision making under Article 104, the numbers in Parliament were not 138.
But that's what Haruna Iddrisu has been explaining, that at least there was one MP on standby who's not in good health, but if need be, the majority was ready to bring that member of Parliament to the floor.
But
so it wouldn't have made any difference.
I'm just simply saying that you need to understand the dynamics. Article 104 must be read as a whole. Article 104 is not invoked by itself. It's invoked by members of Parliament to question, to challenge a decision. And the invocation is in Parliament. And I haven't worked in Parliament for close to 15 years. I can tell you that until such invocations of the authority of Parliament to rule on Article 104 are made, Parliament assumes, and it is law, that everything is right in Parliament. So we have had occasions where we were less than 15 transacting official business in Parliament.
So what you're suggesting is the minority may not be successful when they go to the Supreme Court.
I say it's slim. Reading
right.
Ablai's case, that case stood on whether or not a quorum had been formed for the purposes of a decision, and whether or not in determining the quorum under 104, the Speaker can count himself in as a member of Parliament. That was what the Supreme Court was invited to answer, and I think they answered that.
Right.
Whether a quorum is self-invoking is another matter.
So see, this is why I was saying that.
Yes,
this is why I was saying that the minority should have stayed in Parliament. At least somebody should have stayed to remind the Speaker that they did not have quorum at the time. But unfortunately, the danger is that if someone had stayed, then they would have had a quorum, the same quorum that they were seeking to deprive the majority of. So I think the minority found itself in this difficult position, whether to make someone stay or to leave. Because if one person stays, they beat the 138 number, in which case they would have a quorum to take a decision.
So you believe
that would legitimize
you believe that the minority would not make any success? I mean, they will not be successful when they go to the Supreme Court.
Not that they will not make any success, but if you go by the earlier decision before the Justice Ablai case, you notice that the majority staged the walkout, and the minority had 137 numbers in Parliament. And that was a decision that rejected the budget of the 2022 budget. Now, if you take it from that angle, then you can easily say that indeed there's somewhat a good case for the Supreme Court to entertain.
Right.
But outside of that, we still have a challenge on our hands.
So let's see how that will go. But briefly, Justice, you are a party in this case. So how is that likely to affect your decision to call for a review? Because initially you gave that indication.
Indeed, my decision to go for a review remains. Remember, I still have up to the 8th of April to file my review application, and my senior recognizes that indeed the review application is a very difficult application to make, and the success of it or the chances of it succeeding is very difficult. But that notwithstanding, I think I'm pursuing that line on the basis of the principle that it and the finality that it brings to this whole discussion. Right. Now, this issue has cropped up, and this may be yet another opportunity that the Supreme Court may possibly look at and make a more far-reaching pronouncements that would affect some of these matters even
Right.
before they are even filed.
I'm grateful. Unfortunately,
anything is possible at this moment.
Unfortunately, we don't have all of the time. I'm grateful, Justice Abdullahi, and also Honorable Yusuf Hussaini. But what will be the implication for you in terms of the cost now that we know at least Parliament has passed the E-levy? And we have some breakdown for you in terms of the cost implication. There's also a need for you to understand what percentage of charge will now be effected. So you have that on your screens now. Government is actually going ahead to implement a 1.5% charge rate. That's what we're working with now, which definitely means that the telcos would have to do that haircut of from 1% to 0.75. That was the initial promise. As to whether or not they're going to stick with that now, we're not too sure about it. But there's definitely a cost implication for you. So many reactions on that score. So here you have it on your screens now. In terms of the 1.5 rate, with a service charge of 1%, which is the current arrangement, that telcos actually charge 1% anytime you transact business on your mobile platform. So now that government is cutting down from 1.75 to 1.5, then that would definitely mean that you're going to be bearing that cost of 2.5% service charge. So here it is. If you're dealing with the threshold, the minimum threshold of 100 Ghana cedis, because if you go above 100 cedis, that's when the charges begin to accumulate. So at a point of 100 Ghana cedis, all you have to cough up is one Ghana cedi at most in terms of dealing or paying the service charge. But then if you go beyond the 100 cedi threshold, what it will mean is that you're going to be incurring some cost of approximately 3.5, that's 3 cedis 50 pesos. So your charge may also shoot up, and you may be paying 201 cedis, thereabout, 201.50. That's what you're going to be paying. So your charge may go up at that point. At 500 Ghana cedis, you're going to be paying 512 cedis, 50 pesos. That's what you're going to be paying. And if you're dealing with an amount of 1,000 Ghana cedis, then your charge will be 1,025 Ghana cedis. So that's how the charge is going to be looking like for you if you're dealing with the 1.5 rate. But then if you're dealing with the 1.5 rate with a 0.75% cut, and that would have to come through from the Momo vendors, not the vendors particularly, but the telcos, the telecommunication networks would have to do a haircut if they are that graceful enough. Then it will mean that you're going to pay the 1.5 plus the 0.75 service charge. So that would mean that at 100 cedis, you would have to pay 100 cedis 70 pesos or 80 pesos just to make up for that cost. But then if you're dealing with 1,000 cedis, then you would have to incur the cost of some 21 Ghana cedis. So that will be 1,021 Ghana cedis for you there in terms of the charges that you'd be incurring there. So quite scary, isn't it? But the Association of Mobile Money Vendors are already reacting to this. Joining me now is the Public Relations Officer for the association, Charles Ado, who's joining us now for a reaction on this. So Charles, here we are. Government has finally proceeded. They've passed the E-levy. Your initial concern was about how much it will now be a burden for you, those in the business community trading the cash in bulk. So talk to us about that. What's your concern as an association now that the E-levy has been passed?
Okay, good afternoon to your cherished viewers and the panelists. I want to say that as an association, our stance still remains the same. We are not happy about this passage because things are very tough. Right from last year, we made our point so clear that government has to make sure that the needful is done on the part of the agents across the country. As we speak now, should this 1.5%, as you have said, it has been approved, awaiting President's authorization, should it come to pass, it means that majority of our members are going to be cut off from the business fold. Secondly, we are also saying that even without this 1.5% introduction, our transaction volumes are still going down. Majority of Ghanaians are not able to cope with even the current state of charges. So should there be a plus of 1.5, then it means that they are taken out of business. Therefore, the unemployment rate in the country is so high. Interestingly enough, we as agents, as we educated Ghanaians earlier, we have to sort for capital to finance our activity. And sorting for capital in our country, as we all know, the base rate is now very, very expensive. So where do we resort to these funds and then later come back and make sure that the needful is done in terms of mobilizing capital to help undertake our activity? So we are not happy, even though still our stance still remains the same. We plead that government will call us for a major consultation because the telcos, as we rightly stated, indicated that they want to take a slash of 0.75%, which will help reduce the burden on Ghanaians. But we are on the ground and we know the implementation of this policy lies with us agents. Interestingly enough, both minority and majority are also going to bear this same cost. But the ordinary Ghanaian are the one who is going to suffer because getting money to even send is a problem now. And then coming out with these new charges, I know that it is going to bring our businesses down. We are only hoping and praying that through the consultation, there might be a leeway. But as an association, we are not happy this has come to pass. But once it is passed, we have no option.
Okay, but Charles, we'll talk about the implications. We'll talk about the implications on your businesses shortly. But there's this announcement you made earlier that you had consulted or engaged the communications ministry on your concerns, where those of you who are merchants will be excluded from this. Have you made progress in that regard?
Yes. Interestingly, with us as agents or merchants, we are not going to suffer with our merchants based on this charge. But interestingly, every agent across the country is equally a subscriber. So this very number I'm calling, you are talking with me, has a mobile money wallet on. So every transaction personally I will undertake will also come with this charge. So no agent is left out. Your agent SIM, the one you are using to transact, will not be charged as we stated earlier. But personally, your personal MTN or whatever number that you're using will be taxed. And therefore, all of us are inclusive.
So which means that the meeting wasn't successful. Is that what you're saying?
Not at all. Not at all, my brother. Not at all. We were made to petition the ministry, and then every proposal that we didn't fit, the essence why we don't support the implementation of the E-levy, we put it out there. And then there was a consideration to that. But we were made to understand that the committee will call us so that we have an engagement. But nothing of that sort happened.
So going forward, what would this mean for businesses? Members of your association?
My brother, as I earlier stated, unemployment is going to be at the highest peak. Majority of these agents employ 2 to 3 people. And we are close to over 450,000 across the country. And therefore, when things are tough, when customers are not patronizing because of the high charges, they will also resort to other alternatives. And when that happens, our businesses is going to dwindle. Our profit margin will dwindle. It will bring a lot of hardship on Ghanaians. And interestingly, the most difficult part of it is that aside all this hula baloo, most agents are still being killed. Agents are being attacked. What is government doing about that? Just 3 days ago in Swala, an agent was at a gunpoint. He was shot. Nothing is being done. It just comes to the news and that is all. Government should also rally support and have plans for agents across the country. Because if this implementation of the E-levy will come to force, it is the agent who is going to do that. And if agents are being killed day in and day out, then who is going to implement such policy on behalf of the government in terms of mobilizing revenue?
Okay, as we wrap up, are there any remedial measures in the offing? Are you going to engage government? What more measures do we know of in terms of your association? What options are available to you now?
Okay, we petitioned around January 21st, we petitioned the minority parliament and then the office of the president. We had it at the back that the office of the president is inviting us for a talk. If my memory serves me right, I think in May, we want to meet as the president of the land, we want to meet us to have an engagement. So we will look forward to hearing from our father, and definitely whatever proposal that we deem fit that it will help our businesses, we will also make it known to him.
Charles Haruna, I'm grateful that you've been able to join us. We'll keep our eyes on that engagement and bring you some updates in our subsequent bulletins. But don't forget that this is still The Pulse with me, Blessed Sudan. We return shortly after this break.